Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for joining and finding here. Yeah, I'm really passionate about technology since 30 years, and from my perspective, why I think it's such an exciting time to be in, because right now what we experience is that with the help of technology, we can create realities that seemed like total science fiction in the past. Just to give you some perspective, put yourself into the shoes of 1945 when you read this article from Vannevar Bush in 45 talking about how in the near future we might have something like a third eye attached to us, like, you know, in the form of a camera, or even if you consider that like even a little display in the classes, and this is 45, so of course you can imagine in a perspective of 45, this seemed like totally not possible science fiction. This will never happen. And guess what? It became a reality today in factories. So this is, for instance, augmented reality assisted repairs with Linde. And now we have this whole AI kicking in. For instance, having like 20,000 documents securely in the cloud. You have image recognition. So you have human on site. You have a human in the call center, plus the AI layer with image object identification, etc. Or another thing from the 50s that, yes, robots will be there to help us. And of course, you all know the videos that, you know, that are so present, and it has become a reality. But from my perspective, when people dreamed about that we will have robotics in our home helping us with our day-to-day activities, of course, this seemed impossible. This seemed like, oh, way too expensive, way too dangerous. And again, I'm excited about these technologies where we have this shift from, for instance, hydraulics to electromotors. And all of a sudden, you have a complete new way how you can engage with machines. And by the way, it's not only the mechanical progress, it's also the progress that we can build in 5G. So we have something like, for instance, a ChatGPT interface, and we can talk to the machines with the huge difference that all of a sudden, not necessarily do we have to code everything we want from the machine. We can show them. It's based on observation. We can show it like, watch me do the same. And the training cycles have become increasingly, I mean, this is less than 5 hours to train it and to replicate it. All the way to that machines can inform other machines, that they can share knowledge, that they can train other machines. So I'm really fascinated by that. And by the way, when I show examples like that, for me, it's always about the human side. For me, it's never about, oh, gosh, we can replace people with cheaper robots. No, for me, it's, for instance, like finding like work that has actually not been done by humans not very luckily. In this case, I was a civil servant myself, and most likely I've lifted 1,000 people out of beds. It's not a nice job. I rather spend time sitting next to a bed and talk to an elderly person and hug and talk a story than lifting it out of the bed. Put yourself into the shoes of the 50s when someone confronted you with, well, it will be totally normal that we can hire people and work with people that we don't see in real life. Of course, for the 50s, impossible to imagine, now becoming a day-to-day reality for all of us. But again, I'm so excited about this whole Gen AI layer, because now, for instance, we can externalize knowledge. We can speak to a machine, we can be interviewed by an AI, and we can get this knowledge out, we can have it transcribed, we can have it tagged, and all of a sudden, the internal knowledge of workers are in the machine and approachable. We can do the onboarding differently if we choose to do so. By the way, this is a real case. So she's currently in maternity leave. She's not working for a year. Before she left, she wanted to have an avatar of herself. So what you see here is an avatar, and all of a sudden, for a year, while she is not present in the company, she still does the onboarding. And by the way, the onboarding was always German and English. Now it became 40 languages. So the onboarding is now in 40 languages. Whatever language you have as a mother tongue, the onboarding is done in that. Another example from the past, and most likely my last one that I want to spend a minute on, is Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy, because that is deeply personal, because I remember it was my favorite book as a teenager, and I remember so well this notion, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a Babel fish, something I can put inside my ear and everything is translated in real time? And guess what? This is how I was able to actually buy a Chinese SIM card without understanding the language, without speaking the language. This is how I was fluent in Japanese when I was recently in Tokyo. This is how I basically was able to, see here a building in Tallinn and ask AI, what am I looking at? And it doesn't stop there. If you have a Samsung phone with the real-time translations of calls, it became a today's reality that I can speak in my native tongue of German, and it's on the other side, it's Swedish, Estnish, Finnish, whatever kind of that we want to have. And the whole notion to have something like a physical guide through the galaxy that holds the entire knowledge of human mankind, isn't it where AI leads us to? Isn't it what Perplexity is already like showing us where it could lead to? So I could bore you with all these images from the past and why I'm so passionate about these pictures. Some of them, this is 100 years old. So why I'm so passionate about this is multifold. I mean, first of all, it shows us that what used to be science fiction clearly has become a reality today. And it's the fact that we actually don't even recognize that. We take it as a granted. It's something like, oh yeah, it's possible, but it used to be science fiction. The other very, very important lessons that I learned is, because looking backwards, it all makes perfectly sense. It sounds like that, with technology, each year a computer is calculating a bit faster and that AI becomes a little bit faster, when in reality, in technology, it never is linear. I can't think of one single technology that went linear. It's just like with the metaphor of the chessboard. It starts slowly, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, but all of a sudden it has this kind of like exponential curve. The reason for that is because usually technology is accelerating the other technology. All of a sudden you have a technology that is a catalyst to the next technology, and all of a sudden you're in this kind of like exponential curve, and it's kind of like surprises you. So I think the perfect example to state my point is with, of course, AI. And I haven't attended one single session here that was not mentioning AI. Just for the sake of it, why is it now a topic? Because we all know when we talk to AI, mostly we talk about generative AI, and it's an old discipline. So what I love about this very old chart, it reminds us like, wait a second, it's been talked about for 70 years. But my argument for today is what happened in the last 7 years since that old chart ended. You can't compare the last 7 years to the 70 years before. And we shouldn't compare the next 7 months to the 7 years before. 7 years ago, this was a problem for machine learning. I mean, you see the difference between a muffin and a dog, and you know what a chicken nugget and a dog is. But for machine learning, you had to really say, you are a dog, you are a dog. Oh, you're not a dog. And of course, this changed dramatically, because nowadays, this is when I say 1 + 1 = more than 2. Now it all perfectly aligns. We do have new neural network design. We do have new training data. We have the increased computing power. We have an open source community, like thousands of people waking up every single day and collaborating on a piece of software. And all of a sudden, these tools are available to all of us. And each one of us can do something like that. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, we can combine tools. We can create an image and animate it with the next image. And all of a sudden, it became a creative outlet. And what I have to say, with my background as a creative, I'm not scared by this development. I feel empowered, because often I felt my creativity is limited by my technical knowledge of tools. And this is slowly diminishing. Slowly, our imagination has become the limitation. Thinking about text to video, this is a perfect example. I can make a bet that at the beginning of the year, most of the specialists would have said there is no way that we will see this year in 25 text to video in a good quality. Just to remind you, this was the quality at the beginning of the year. So this is text to video. You have a prompt, give me gymnastics, and it rather looks like a horror movie. So based on that, you know, based on all the experts, well, it's, of course, it's vector animations, it's physics. How should that be possible with the current type of technology that we have? And then, you know, remember the chessboard, all of a sudden 1 + 1 = more than 2. The stars align, and all of a sudden we do have access to such kind of technology. So for me, in my work, it's often that we really shouldn't look at today's limitations. We should look at possibilities. So whenever a client says like, well, I don't know if that works, my usual answer is, well, not yet. But it might work in a year from now. But I'm also aware that, of course, to quote Spider-Man, with huge power comes huge responsibilities. So I'm perfectly aware with this type of technology, of course, we can do something really bad, like fake news and disinformation, etc. Each one of us. It's not a limitation of technology anymore. But at the same time, it can create something hopeful. And I always get goosebumps when I look at this. This is a school teacher, and she asked her kids, how do you see yourself in 10 years? And they made these, she made it with AI, this representation, what the kids dreamed about. And look at the smiles, look at the faces lighting up. It's the same technology, and it's two sides of the coin. The choice is ours. We can use technology to create something harmful, fake news. We can create it to create a nice vision. We can empower people with that. Now, with these images comes so many lessons learned, because, for instance, when people dreamed about electric cars, this is actually the year I'm born, and it's a real fact. Mercedes already built 50 fully electric vehicles, fully electric, with a battery swap. So 860 kilograms of a battery pack that is swapped within minutes, having full electric transporters that had a range up to 100 kilometers. I'm showing that not to blame Mercedes, oh, what happened in the years between? I show it to remind us it would have been too early. It needed 10 years, the decade between 2010 and 2020, that the most expensive part went down. And now it decreases and decreases. Now it makes sense. So this is one of the core lessons that I gain out of these old pictures. Sometimes we have to be really patient. And by the way, from innovation management, this is when corporates really screw up, because they lost interest in a technology. Speaking about a car is technology. So of course, with the progress of technology, it was just a matter of time that we had fully autonomous cars on German highways. We had German cars competing. But you know how it happened. All of a sudden there was a disruptor, and all of a sudden there was level 5 autonomy. And now another very important lesson that we can learn, now the hype cycle kicks in. And we all know since 20 years, every single technology goes through this cycle. So we have level 5 autonomy, we put billions into it, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, of course, we will not have driver's license anymore. We will not have accidents anymore. We will not see deaths anymore. But this is the vicious cycle with the hype cycle. So we promise all, but then reality kicks in. We have deaths. We have cars not being able to navigate small roads or round circles. So this saying is also true for every technology. We tend to overpromise, but then on the long run, we underestimate it. Because to stick with this example, besides all the rage that level 5 will never happen, actually in the US, in San Francisco, already 1/4 of all paid rides is now Waymo. They're doing 1 million paid fully autonomous rides. So this curve basically is really influencing my work a lot. And to come back to that, another very important lesson, and I had to learn it the hard way. Who am I to be able to predict the future 10 years from now? I have a very good gut feeling about the next 3 to 5 years. I'm really good in getting a gut feeling about what impact AI has in the next 5 years. But 10 years from now, 15 years from now, so if it's an uncertain future, if we can't say what the future is, in my understanding, we need to ask different questions. So I refuse to answer a question like this. What is the future for politics? What is the future for health? What is the future for mobility? I can't answer it. And honestly, I don't think any one of us can if it's 10 plus years in the future. Better questions to ask ourselves is, number one, what is it actually what influences our future? What are the most key relevant trends, not only for me as an organization, but for me as an individual, for our employees, for our customers, and what do we do with that? Because trend scouting alone is worth nothing. What do we do with a trend? So if we have meta classes with a display, what do we do with this trend? What does it mean for us? Question number two, how do we stay relevant in the future? Because this is something, often we just think, well, the future will progress, but what does it mean for us? I love this video from Toyota because they were the first automotive OEM who thought, well, we're in mobility, but mobility is more than coming from A to B. Mobility is access to education, access to see friends, access to see family. So if we're in mobility, we should think beyond the car. And all of a sudden, you're thinking about the whole city. You're thinking about how the future will look like for people living together. Third question is, how do we actually stay future ready? And this is, again, something deeply personal. How can I have lifelong learning? How can I have a growth mindset? But also as an organization, how do we prepare ourselves and our employees for the future? And finally, and I think this is the most important question, if we don't know what the future is, what we can do is we can articulate what kind of future do we want. And it's most likely futures as in the plural. So what I'm referring to is, I know it sounds cheesy, but this is for me the difference that it can make. How can I actually articulate a future that I would like to wake up to? So this is again from the 60s when people thought about the future of education. It sounds pretty good to me. I mean, you connect students, you have tutors, you have electronic media that helps you. But in the same year in Japan, they thought about the future, well, and if you don't answer the question right, a robot comes and hits you on the head. It's the same kind of thinking about the future of education with a twist. One sounds dystopian, one sounds utopian. When we think about the future, do we really talk to all stakeholders? And I challenge you, please find me any kind of video or image or future thinking about, from the 50s, 60s, 70s about current cities where you see walkers, where you see people on bikes, pedestrians. You don't find that. So this is, for instance, General Motors from the 60s. You can't find a single video that depicts people on bikes. It's crazy. So somehow we forgot about these stakeholders. Is it really inclusive? Is it really, most of the videos didn't age well. All the stereotypes that you can think of, and I know it's 2025, so we shouldn't talk about everything that we should consider. I think it should be a given. But also, are we really challenging ourselves constantly? Well, did we thought about the UN SDGs? Did we really talk to our stakeholders? Why I'm so passionate talking about that is because if we all combine that and if we create images for the future, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, but what I'm saying is once we articulated desirable futures, once we put it into a rendering, into a video, into a picture, once we have that, then we can start a dialogue. We can think about, is that utopian? Do I want to wake up to this? And most importantly, how do I get there? What is the one important strategic step that I can do tomorrow to make this dream become a reality? And my final point is, because I work with technology and I'm passionate about technology, but what I see happening over and over again is that we treat technology as a driver. So although I'm an Apple fan, when the Apple Vision Pro was introduced, every single use case I couldn't relate to. Like a parent watching kids play, this is not a nice use case to me. So when I watched the keynote, I was like, wait a second, I love technology, but there is so much beyond technology. I don't need technology to see kids play. So this is my final statement. When we should think about these desirable futures, we always should treat technology as something that is not replacing the human side of that, the human factors, something where human life and joy should not be replaced by technology. On this note, thank you very much, and yeah, let's co-create desirable futures together. Thank you so much. Thank you.